Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and here I am in front of you as a proud Bangladeshi. In a world of shrinking empathy for refugees and migrants, in a world where right-wing xenophobic parties dictate national political agenda and liberals and social democrats, retreat, in a world where outcome of national election is determined by the discovery of 2 rickety boats carrying a dozen of genuine asylum seekers. What Bangladesh has done is commendable. And that's what I feel. And we deeply appreciate the international community's kind commendation, in this regard. However, I'll be very frank. Rohingyas it's an issue, but it's not an issue only of Myanmar and Bangladesh. It's not an issue only of Bangladesh alone. This is a problem, it's an international problem, and that needs to be addressed internationally. If Myanmar refuses to take these people back, its burden should not be put on Bangladesh to look after these refugees. To the best of my knowledge, it's a grade 3 category emergency. Initially for 6 months, has been extended for another 6 months. We don't know after 6 months whether it will remain there or some other new emergency will crop up. And the humanitarian aid that we are talking about will still continue to flow to this country. And who's going to look after this million of refugees? Certainly, even if we had wanted, we don't have the resources to do that. And that's an acknowledgement of the fact. And it's for that reason we feel international community has to create conditions in our town for them to return. There is no other option. On durable solution, voluntary repatriation is best option. But other 2 options also appear to be fading. The whole issue of third country resettlement and also the temporary for Bangladesh to accept these people. So we are very disappointed, that the UN is paralyzed, despite the fact that the major functionaries of the UN have spoken the right words, have used the right words, but as a membership-based organization, state members, have been very myopic. The responsibility of international community, of the permanent members, is to look after world peace and security. But they have been looking after their own interests. Even aspirant, permanent members are also looking after their own interests. So that is the world that we are in. ASEAN has been mugged. We are completely baffled. How can ASEAN states remain so sort of oblivious to what's happening in one of their member states? OIC's stand has been very hypocritical, and I'll call spade a spade. And we have had our keynote speaker, alluding to that, why it is. So it is in this context what we feel is the UN system is on the dock, actually. UN system is on the dock. It was on the dock during Darfur, the whole concept of never again, but it did happen again. What is the UN system doing? It is in this context we have to go for a reality check. And fundamental in that reality check is we are not dealing with a rational state. We are essentially, normally what you would expect a state to respect rule of law, to protect all persons, not only its own citizens, any person living on its territory, be it national or non-national. The state has to protect those persons. So that it is not doing. To ensure access to justice and to establish, to have non-discrimination. Nothing is being done by these rogues, essentially a rogue state, the Burmese state. So they have little respect for the ideals that the humanity cherishes. And it is appalling that in this 21st century, the world is essentially condoning actions of this rogue state that can engage in barbarity, in the scale of which we have all heard today. Speakers after speakers have narrated that the keynote speaker and others have so eloquently narrated it. So I would borrow my dear friend Zani's statement in this regard, and it's a very sharp observation, that it's even worse than Hitler's deeds. During Hitler's time, international human rights law did not exist as it exists now. The whole purpose now, technically, he did not violate any international human rights law. But now this whole corpus of international human rights law exists, and here is this one state which is essentially, showing their thumbs to the entire world, and violating and banishing its people, as we all know. And as the country which has been suffering the most, Bangladesh, just because of historical, what people speak about, accident of history. It's an accident of geography that we are placed with, by a neighbor, who does not sort of respect basic things. In deference to as a good neighbor, Bangladesh did not term Rohingyas for a long period of time. We did not bring the issue, even during negotiating the last instrument, we did not bring the issue of 200 to 300,000, refugees who came since 1992. Still, that issue has not been brought in. Bangladesh did not, raise this issue in UN General Assembly, in OIC, in ASEAN, nor even in UNHCR's Executive Committee, of which it's a member. Mainly because Bangladesh thought, okay, we are dealing with a neighbor, let's do it in a good neighborly way. But unfortunately, our good neighborliness has been viewed as weakness by the Burmese. And look at the repatriation process, Mr. Chairman. Here, excuses after excuses, demands after demands. Bangladesh has really bent its back to ensure the repatriation gets started. But they came up with a series of things that we don't have the time to discuss, but our foreign ministry is represented here. They will be able to tell you that how illogical those demands have been. So essentially, and not only that, despite such moves, the Burmese state had the audacity to blame Bangladesh for the delay. They could not provide an iota of evidence that where Bangladesh faltered in proceeding with the repatriation process. But in various scheme and international media, they're pointing at Bangladesh. And look at the hypocrisy. They took a family of 5, not from our side of the border, from no man's land, and portrayed to the international media, and the gullible international media reported it to be that first case of repatriation has taken place. And that is the sheer, that is the way that country sort of operates. So this is, I'll be done with it. Thank you very much for the reminder. So we all know how the charred, villages were demolished, bulldozed, when they should be creating an enabling environment for repatriation to take place. Essentially, they created all the conditions to send signals to the refugees, do not come back. You are not welcome back here. So it is in this context, it's not a typical case of repatriation. It's not only a matter for agreeing on modalities and setting up logistics for facilitation of return of refugees. It is a genocidal regime is still in control of the state and has remained resolutely committed in its intent to exterminate the population. The sources of oppression is still at the helm, and hence the emphasis on the concept of protected return to protected homeland. I'm not going to go into the details of that. What I'm basically saying is, this is not something out of the blue that was drawn from. History of that particular geographical terrain, there is a recognition of the fact that these people had enjoyed certain degree of, their protection, and that protection, Burmese state is refusing to accord them that protection. So onus lies on the international community to provide, that protection. My final point is, there is a propensity in different quarters, to present this as an Islamic, threat, likely terrorist, I think despite massive suffering of genocidal state terrorism, Rohingyas present a perfect example of not to be provoked. There has not been a single case example of act of terrorism of members of this community. Their only demand is safe return to a safe homeland. I believe, this is something we should back up properly and bring the perpetrators of this ill to justice and ensure that is done. This is the minimum that they expect from the world, and we should be, delivering them on that account. Thank you very much.